Hi, my name is Jonathan MacDonald. I'm the author of the Sunday Times best-selling book, Powered by Change. I'm honoured to be here with you today. I think the place to start is by looking at the concept of what hidden secrets of success really means. If you've ever wondered how the seriously successful get to where they're at, or what characteristics would increase your chances of success, then you're in the right place. I've learned a lot in the last 3 decades in business. I've learned the importance of cash flow management. I've learned the importance of trust, the importance of differentiating between material gain, which isn't anywhere near as fulfilling one's purpose. I've learned that things take 3 times longer, cost twice as much, and make half as what you thought. I've learned that the definition of hard work takes on an entirely new meaning when you work for yourself versus working for someone else. I've learned that working on a project for someone can be just as rewarding if you share the same objectives. And from observing the most highly successful people for so many years, I've realised that they have a number of things in common. I've also realised that anyone could apply these things. These are characteristics of what they do in any size of organisation or in any industry or any geographical territory. So as we go through, do make a note of the elements that resonate with you the most and also the least. I'll speak for around half an hour, and in the future, if you want to send me any comments or questions, you can always do so via info@poweredbychange.com or team@poweredbychange.com. You can get to myself and my team at that juncture, and also go to poweredbychange.com and apply these learnings in practice. So I hope that this is of value. Remember, what I'm about to cover here isn't exhaustive. It doesn't deprioritize or take away from any other techniques that you have applied successfully. They're just my observations of what's in common in the environments of higher success. So let's get stuck in. I think the first one is pretty self-evident, and a lot of people would resonate with this, but it's something where we can watch out for the knowing doing trap. In other words, what we actually feel as if we've digested and inherited in terms of the passion for doing things, and then also how we manifest that, because quite often we can feel one thing but not necessarily do anything about it. Another way of putting that is that we shouldn't bother doing stuff that we don't believe in, because when it gets tough, we're going to need the juice to be worth the squeeze, as it were. And that's why in Powered by Change, the concept of elevation is so important, because elevation enables us to actually get to our real purpose of what we're doing, and see from a broader perspective what the activities are that we should be doing to innovate the most, without necessarily using the standard words of the industry or business that we're in. Elevation is what I think enables people to see the true picture of the business they're really in, what they're truly doing. And it's a fantastic way of differentiating people from those who try and achieve success and those that actually naturally stand in their success already. So rather than it being a journey toward a destination, it's a manifestation of their passion in the now. The kind of twin of passion I've realised amongst really successful people is urgency. Now, anyone who's seen me speak before, or who's read Powered by Change or been on the poweredbychange.com platform, will know that the saying that I often use is, today is the slowest pace of change we'll ever experience. And it's true. The change in the next 10 years will feel like the change in the last 30 or 40. And because of that, I think that the characteristics of real success always have this sense of urgency. And in Powered by Change, we call it productive paranoia. It's the understanding that change increases its pace, and therefore we have to increase our pace in what we do. Otherwise, we can't actually keep up with that change, let alone be powered by it, which is the ultimate objective, of course. And one of the ways of doing that, using productive paranoia, is to be increasingly aware of any fundamental change in consumption, production, or distribution that has the potential to disrupt us if it were to scale. So I kind of use this DNA of disruption matrix, which shows that there's a fundamental change on the left-hand side, and then there, over time, there's a low threat rating by us where we feel as if it's not going to affect us. It's happening in a different territory, it's happening to different people, different industry, it's certainly nothing that would affect us at all. And then there's, because of the rate of disruption increasing, there's an inflection point into the mainstream where everything kind of becomes suddenly too late. It's the moment when hotels realise the power of Airbnb, or the moment the black cab or yellow cab companies realise the power of Uber, or the moment where news outlets realise the power of Google or Facebook. These are all moments in time which are far right-hand side of this chart, which are way too late. And in fact, the reliance on business models, the existing business models, has been such that the validity will always decrease over time in the face of perpetual change. And so we cling on to the existing business models, refuse to be productively paranoid as to what could disrupt us, and therefore we don't actually double down on our own disruptive opportunities. And that's why I think really successful people have that high degree of urgency, because they understand that chart. Now, of course, for that to happen, we need to be surrounded by amazing and positive people. And another characteristic, this one from really successful people that I've observed, is that they are exclusively surrounded by people with a high will. The willingness to test, learn and improve, and the willingness to try and creatively innovate is absolutely thoroughly digested across all people around highly successful people. And so in Powered by Change, the usage of skill and will is what we use to see where people actually fit on this map, the personality assessment matrix. So if we have skill and will, then obviously those people should lead, and if we have less skill but we still have the will, then people can learn. The people with no will and no skill should obviously be avoided, but it's the potential in the people on the top right hand side, the people with the skill but with less will, to align them to our purpose, our elevated purpose, with a productive paranoia of urgency. The alignment opportunity then is to bring the people with less will into the far left hand side of this, where they can either lead or learn, but at least they have the will. It is much more important to have the will than the skill. Skill can be learned. Will is something which requires us to believe that we're doing something that actually matters. For that, of course, highly successful people require focus. And you'll notice with people who've really succeeded and achieved, they have a laser sharp focus on what exactly matters. And that does require the clarity of purpose in elevation. It requires an understanding of the speed of change with urgency. It definitely requires us to be willing to at least test, learn and improve, but we have to look very carefully at how we spend our attention. And to Empowered by Change, there is the attention management matrix, which essentially is two grid lines. One is what it gives us in terms of energy, time, resource, money, whatever, what it takes for us to get there. And so if it's something that gives us a lot and takes very little, then that's fantastic. We should be maximizing that day in, day out. If it's something that doesn't give us very much, but it doesn't take very much, it's kind of a waste of time, so we can minimize it out of our lives. If there's something that takes a lot, but gives us very little, then those are things that we should avoid. And if there's something that takes a lot, but gives us a lot, it's something we need to apply ourselves to, so we can gradually, over time, use less energy, time, money and resources to get to the top left-hand side. So that's a graph that we can look at and apply in our lives. And just for a second, if you look at this on the screen and think, what do you do in a day that could fit into one of four categories, let's say? You might find that there is quite a lot of stuff that is maybe on the lower half, i.e. it doesn't necessarily give us very much, it doesn't really take all that much all the time, but there's things that aren't necessarily really truly fulfilling. Highly successful people tend to operate on the upper half of this spectrum. In an ideal world, it's on the top left-hand side, but quite often you'll notice that people have to apply. If you look at the tennis pros, who are highly successful, they mostly have had to work really, really, really hard. They've had to apply on the top right hand side so much effort and energy, but they know that the reward is great. So therefore they're on the top right, moving as much as they possibly can over to the top left hand side. And to do that, when we apply ourselves, this application of energy, effort, resources, and whatever it takes is about working smarter, not harder. It's worth remembering it, and as brilliantly said by James Clear in Atomic Habits, that if you improve 1% per week, you'll be 50% better in a year. And so forming good habits is extremely important. And habits are repeated patterns that we have within a feedback loop called the 4 laws of behavioural change. And those 4 laws are to firstly, what James Clear calls in Atomic Habits, the cue. And the trick is to make the cue obvious. And the cue is the thing that triggers us to do whatever it is that we want to do. Then there's craving, and the key is to make the craving attractive, so that when we get the cue, there's an attractive thing to do to act on our craving, which of course results in our response, which is the third part. And response needs to be easy, so that when we have the obvious cue and the attractive craving, there's an easy response that we can take. And the fourth and final part is the reward, which needs to be satisfying. Therefore, we have an obvious cue, an attractive craving, an easy response, and a satisfying reward. And these are the 4 laws of behaviour change. And as we apply ourselves toward maximising what is a high return of our personal investment, we should be enabling these 4 laws of behavioural change to be in place so that we can perform far greater. And in terms of that performance, if you remember when I said about the willingness to test, learn and improve, I personally believe that from observing the highly successful people, they seem to have a different terminology of failure. It would appear that failure happens when learning doesn't happen. In other words, the whole saying of fail fast, fail often is a misnomer, or rather it's missaid. In fact, learning fast and learning often is a far more realistic and productive way forward, and it's certainly something that goes against what people kind of commonly would class as the cool statements about failing. I don't believe that actually is productive. Whilst we're learning fast and learning often, what I've noticed that the best, most successful people don't spend too much time around unkindness, and it's similar to the will to test, learn and improve, but kindness and being generous with our attention and our praise is very much a characteristic of good leadership. You'll also find that successful people, and I don't mean highly successful people in terms of net worth, I mean successful people in terms of that and feeling tremendously fulfilled, surrounded by really loving people. That wealth is far superior in many cases than having X zeros after your name. The kindness of surrounding yourself with people who are nice to each other means that our lives are much more fulfilling as we grow, and we are able to kind of keep the bad vibes out as much as humanly possible, and really therefore get stuck in to what success can look like. To some, not all, passive income is a characteristic that does generate great success, rather than the misconception that we're sold as we're growing up, that we should follow the traditional career path of working a 50-hour work week to receive a stable paycheck. And so, in other words, get to the office early, stay late, come in on the weekends, and then maybe, just maybe, you'll get a raise one day. And hopefully, if you've worked long enough, you'd save enough to retire by the age of 65 when you haven't any more energy to do anything due to the fact that you've worked so hard up until that point. And I think it's one of society's biggest hoaxes. I think that time is our most important commodity, and all of the money in the world cannot replace that fact. Time is limited, and so automating everything is very important once we've worked out the manual processes that are in place. And in the Powered by Change platform, that's exactly what you're able to do. You can identify which parts are actually costing in terms of time and energy, and then automate those things, and also which parts would enable a passive income. So it's around making the money while you're not working hard, and rather than selling your time for money, what you're enabling is you're actually getting money for your time. And that switch around, the inversion, enables us from active income to passive income, and it's something that is one of the most powerful traits of highly successful people that I've observed. The ninth point, however, is to do with how we view ourselves in terms of our potential. As Mark Parker from Nike once said, we focus on the distance between us and our potential, not us and our competition. And very successful people care less about competitors. They don't necessarily benchmark themselves against how other people are succeeding or performing. They benchmark themselves against how they could be performing, and now and in the future. In the Powered by Change platform, the entire process starts with goal setting. And the reason it starts with that is because without actually setting a bar, we don't really know what's good enough for us or what's overachieving for us. We do realise, of course, in business, everyone knows around that the measurement and metrics and key performance indicators and management business objectives are really, really important. And they are even more important if we base them on what our potential is rather than what we think other people are achieving. And to that extent, where our potential lies could well be in the mess that we can find and fix. Really successful people are almost constantly just mess finding. And one of the ways of finding mess in markets, and where there is a mess, there is a market, is to consistently ask why. And why do things need to be like this? Why does that circuit board need to look like this? Why does this admin task need to happen? Why do we need to triplicate checking into a hotel on different forms? Why do we need to fill in details that we've already filled in online? Why do we need to take pictures of receipts and post them somewhere where actually it's already linked to our bank balances? You know, these are all questions that if we ask why enough, we'll find massive areas for innovation. And at this time of our lives, in this moment in time, there's never been more mess to fix. And I think the most successful people are addressing those messes, and they will opportunistically see how they can make people's lives better and create more value by fixing the mess, not in a temporary opportunistic way in terms of I'll grasp that whilst I can. It's more like, how can we make a real societal difference now, or a real commercial uptick now? It doesn't need to be altruistic. How can we do that now in a way that actually addresses where issues are that no one seemingly has fixed just yet? To my point on self-potential, when I was talking about measurement, and even in mess finding as well, we're actually measuring where the messes are. I think we need to hark back to the legendary Pete Drucker, who said that what gets measured gets managed. Now that's, if I relate to that, and I grew up thinking that was actually true, like as in he said that. It's not actually the case. And it certainly has massive merit, but Drucker said that measurement is of high importance. But the newer interpretation is that his meaning was more nuanced than properly or popularly quoted. The problem is that if you take that mantra as gospel, then you run the risk of what gets measured gets managed, even when it's pointless to measure it and manage it. And even if it harms the purpose of the organisation to do so. So this is an important distinction. Not everything that matters can be measured, and not everything that measures matters. So we can differentiate the two things apart, and being exceptionally smart on what we measure is more important than just measuring everything. For instance, if you measure the customer satisfaction of a restaurant by measuring the restaurant's revenue each week, you may think that the customers are satisfied if your revenue increases. But the most successful people in the world are very aware of what needs to be measured and, more importantly, why. So measuring the success of something based on income is only actually measuring the income, not the success. Measuring the popularity isn't linked to that. Measuring the quality isn't linked to that. So if we're looking at what we need to measure, we need to start from the objective of what it is that we're trying to increase in terms of its performance, rather than what can be measured. So lots and lots of digital tools out there that can enable anything to be measured, but if they're not actually measuring things that matter, then the whole thing's for naught. And that's almost as important as the last hidden trait, a hidden characteristic, and the hidden secret. The largest insight from working with really successful people that I've noted, and in fact is the subject of my next book, is around thought management. And the way I see it is that highly successful people have highly developed thought muscles, and some of them have highly developed physical muscles, but all of them have highly developed thought muscles. And I'm sure we all realise that if we watch our thoughts, then they will enable our beliefs to turn into actions that turn into results. So we have to be very careful about how we think. But what we don't tend to do, and highly successful people do, is look at which parts of their thoughts are the weakest. Analysing where our heuristics and biases are, what patterns we're falling into, and then working out a way of managing those thoughts to be productive, compliant armoury to ourselves, as opposed to something that is defining us in a negative way. There is no objective reality, there's purely subjective reality. So our thoughts are telling us what our identity is on a constant second by second basis. But because we think about 70 to 80,000 thoughts per day, and about 80 to 90% of them are the same thoughts as the day before, what happens is that we end up in a patterning loop of our thoughts being prison guards to ourselves. And we consistently self-verify that, oh yes, I believe that, yeah, this happened to me, therefore I am this. And we go round and round and round and round that. And the highly successful people in the world that I've observed are fully aware of what those prison guards are saying, and what's more so is their relationship to their self. In other words, there is the usness, the selfness, and then there's our thoughts, which are separate. Our thoughts are a judge and jury and prosecutor and defendant who are constantly in argument. And then there's ourself. And what we tend to do, because some of our thoughts are very persuasive, we tend to grasp onto the thoughts that justify something that may have been a memory from the past. I'm not good at this, and then you'll find a piece of evidence inside you that supports the fact you're not good at this. Whereas highly successful people say, I think I have this limiting belief that I'm not good at this, but I actually want to be good at this, and I believe I am good at this, and I'm on my way to being good at this. I'm in training to be good at this, and I'm going to improve every single day. If I improve 1% per day, it's half again, 50% in a year. I'm going to do this day in, day out until I actually get better. Rather than I am not good at this, it's I'm actually getting better at this. That's actually a mindset distinction. Now this is a short webinar. It's a short smorgasbord of hidden secrets of success, but they're vitally important. And do watch out for the knowing doing trap, because if this all sounds obvious, then the question is which parts could be tuned up even more in your success journey, especially thought management. After all, as Darwin said, the highest possible stage in moral culture is when we recognise that we ought to control our thoughts. In closing, I just wanted to let you know about one more thing, and I've mentioned poweredbychange.com a few times so far. All of the learnings I've ever experienced can be found within this extremely powerful business performance platform at poweredbychange.com. The platform is free to try, and everything you've heard today relates to different sections inside the platform. Some of the world's fastest growing companies have used these methodologies, and I'd be delighted if you gave it a try free of charge. Also, if you think that anyone else would find this webinar valuable, then you'll notice that this can be shared with others. They can register and watch this at any stage. But also inside Powered by Change, if you feel that that would be valuable to others, you can create a referral code that you can share with others. And if they go on to then subscribe to Powered by Change, you can also earn revenue from that. I hope you found this of value, and I look forward to assisting you more as you use poweredbychange.com. If you're a business coach and you sign up and you do the accreditation, you get to speak to me each week if you so desire. And I would very much like to help you succeed in your career and push things forward and be very conscious of those 12 hidden secrets of success that may seem obvious from the outside. But when you truly dive into them and really investigate what they mean as a complete 12 piece, then you'll find that there is great success waiting for you, provided that you have the willingness to test, learn, and improve and act on your full highest purpose. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you soon at poweredbychange.com. Cheers.